Okay, here we are. This is going to be your demonstration video for assignment 2.5, your EDM buildup. This is our last project for unit 2. This is your final unit project. So you're going to need all of the skills that we've developed from unit 1 in working with the Soundtrap, our digital audio workstation, and also you're going to need all the skills from unit 2 where we've learned about drum set grooves and composition techniques. So beginning at the first step, or even before that, we're going to need to get the assignment into our digital notebook. So starting here with our music production digital Google Classroom, you're going to start. It always comes up to the stream, but we know that you have to go to the classwork tab. That's always where you want to go in this class. So you go to the classwork tab. You're going to find assignment 2.5, the EDM buildup. Click on that. Open up those slides. And we're going to need to copy these into our digital notebook. Now you'll see 3 slides here at the left. You have a few options. You can click one and then select Control A. Control A will highlight all of the slides so you can copy them. You can click the top one and then hold down the Shift key and click the bottom one, and that'll select what's called a range of slides, all 3. Your third option, final option, is to click one and then hold the Control key while you click the others. So any of those 3 options, you just need to make sure you're selecting all 3 of the slides that are here in the assignment. You're going to Control C to copy, okay? Or you can right click and click copy. All right, Control C, whatever, just make sure you copy. Come back to Google Classroom, go into your digital notebook, open up that window or that tab. Scroll to the bottom, down here, scroll all the way to the end, click on the last slide, and then Control V to paste. Control V. Now, if it asks you, you don't want to link the slides. And then if you get a different menu here that says keep original styles, you want to keep original styles, okay? Don't change them to match your particular digital notebook. So do not link or keep original styles. So now that we've got everything in our digital notebook, we can have a look at the instructions. You can see there's 12 instructions here. You can see that the first one is open a new Soundtrap project and change the name of that project to your name and 2.5 EDM Buildup, and then click Save. So I'm going to go over here. Soundtrap link is right up here in the corner. I'm going to use that to open a new project. Give that a chance to load. Discard anything else you were working on. Okay, it's obviously a music project. All of our projects are music projects. So just remind us, open the new Soundtrap project, change the name of the project to 2.5 EDM Buildup, and then click Save. So I'm going here. Up here is where we change. We're going to make it 2.5 EDM Buildup. Spelled that right. And then my name. Okay. Joe Smith. Okay. Here we go. So we've done that. Now I'm going to click Save. And you notice that we now have an identifier up here in the URL. This is called a URL, by the way, the address bar. All right. And there's all these numbers and letters at the end. That's the identifier for our project. Really important. That's how we know we hit save. Now, it says, number 2, paste the URL in the box provided to the right. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to get that URL, select the whole thing, copy, Control C to copy, back over to my digital notebook. See this Soundtrap URL? I'm going to click there and paste that address. If you want to be fancy, you can highlight that, and it's Control K will turn that into a live link. So again, that's Control K to turn that into a link. All right, so now we've got those 2 things done. We've got instruction number 1, we changed the name, we clicked save. Instruction number 2, we pasted the URL in the box to the right. Instruction number 3, very important. We are going to add me, Mr. Drew, as a collaborator on your project. So it says click share. All right, so we go in. The share button is in the top right corner, right up here. I click that button. Okay, now if I search for myself, it's not going to let me pick myself. Okay, so, but You type my name into this box here. It'll suggest a name. It'll suggest me, and you just click invite, and you'll see my name added to the bottom. Alrighty. So X out of that. And that's step number 3. Share your project with Mr. Drew. Okay, so the next thing we're going to have to do, we've completed steps 1 through 3. Now we have to go on to step 4, which says, on the next slide, compose your drum groove and your drum fill. So I'm going to go over here into the thumbnails or the film strip, and I find the next slide, and it says right here, drum groove and drum fill. Each of those has some instructions. First one, the drum groove says start with a basic backbeat or 4 on the floor, and then combine multiple strategies to make an original drum groove. The drum fill says your fill can be basically anything you want that is different from your groove. You can either create a 4-beat fill using the whole beat map, or you can fill in beats 1 and 2, just like your groove. So just copy those right down, and then have your fill be just beats 3 and 4. Okay, those are your options. So let's start with your drum groove. So it says start with a basic backbeat or 4 on the floor. All right, so the first thing we know is that in a basic backbeat, we have the hi-hat on each count here. Okay, we know that in a basic backbeat, we have the snare on 2 and the snare on 4. And then finally, in a backbeat, we have the kick drum on 1 and 3. And a 4 on the floor has the kick drum on 2 and 4. And so for my project, this is an EDM buildup. So I want to be thinking of electronic dance music. I personally am going to use a 4 on the floor to start with. If you want to choose a basic backbeat to start with the kick drum only on 1 and 3, that's fine too. It's totally your option. Now, our multiple strategies for composition. Let's sort of remember in our heads that the 3 strategies for composition, we're starting with something we know, this basic backbeat, or in this case, a 4 on the floor. We can add a note, we can subtract a note, or we can move a note. Those are the 3 things we can do to make this more original. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move a note. So I'm going to take this snare drum note from 4 to the and of 4. And what that does is it sort of comes in earlier. And so it sort of builds energy that way. And then I am going to add, so I just moved a note, and I'm also going to add a note in the kick drum right there, okay, right on the end. And that's all I need to do. I just made that made that drum groove original. So now I'm going to go to the drum fill, and I'm going to create a drum fill. I think I want a whole measure of drum fill. So I think I'm going to do this. So the drum fill can be basically anything. I'm going to leave out the hi-hat. I'm just going to let it be a build, just like that. 2. No, let's not do that. Do that. And actually, I think I will add a hi-hat after all, just to match the snare drum. Okay, so you see what I've done. I've created a drum groove here and a drum fill here. My drum fill is different than the groove. Just make sure you read this note down at the bottom. It says your groove will happen either 1 time or 3 times before your fill. So think about that for a second. Either you're going to have 3 measures of groove and 1 measure of fill, or you're going to have 1 measure of groove, 1 measure of fill. Whichever pattern you choose, 3 plus 1 or 1 plus 1, that pattern is going to repeat over and over again. So let's actually get that into Soundtrap. All right, so it says, number 4, on the next slide, compose your drum groove and drum fill. Just did that. Our next step will be to add a drum track to your project and then use the Pattern Beatmaker to program your groove and fill. Remember that your planner is divided into 2 subdivisions per beat, and the Pattern Beatmaker has 4 subdivisions per beat. Loop your drum parts to fill 4 measures. So now we're going to go over to our Soundtrap project. And just like we said before, we're going to add a new track. We need a drum track. So down here, drums and machines, that's where we're going. Click there. Okay, and then down here at the bottom, we have what's called the pattern Beatmaker. Now, you can see this little oval right in the middle. I can drag that up so I can get it, and I can see the whole track now. A couple of quick things to notice, all right? You see the circle button up here? That's called the cycle mode. Make sure that's turned off, okay? Which means the cycle down here needs to be white, all right? And then we're going to start programming in. Couple of things to note. See that the kick drum is on the top line here in Soundtrap. The snare drum's still in the middle, and the hi-hat is on the bottom. If I click back over to my planner, see the hi-hat's on the top. Now, most of the time, hi-hat's on the top, but in this particular program, they put kick on the top. So you have to sort of flip it over in your head. Here's a little trick for you. I'm going to take this tab right here that we're in. I'm going to grab it and pop it out, okay? And then I'm going to use Windows. I'm going to hold down the Windows or the Start key and then hit my right arrow. And that pops that over to the right-hand side of the screen, and it's going to let me pick the other side. So now I have a side-by-side, all right, and I can actually just close this little tab here. So now I can see side-by-side my Pattern Beatmaker on one side and my composition on the other. I can even close that tab too. So here's how we're going to do this. Kick drum first. So you can see 4 subdivisions per beat over here in Soundtrap, and 2 subdivisions here in my composition planner. So I've got a plan for those extra spaces. So my kick is going to be on 1, 2, 3, 4, and. So here it is, 1, and then the next set, 2, 3. I need to, hang on, let me resize this. Okay, and then 4 and. Now notice 4 and, they're right next to each other in the planner, but I need to leave a space in the actual Beatmaker. Okay, so there's that. 1, 2, 3, 4 and. Now to the snare. I've got the snare on 2, and I've got the snare on the and of 3. So let's find that. 2 is here, second grouping of subdivisions. And then the and is going to be halfway through beat 3, which in this case is there. That's the and of 3. And finally, we're going to move on to the hi-hat. And the hi-hat, very simply, is on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So nice and evenly spaced, but 2 notes per beat. So 1 and. So in this beat, I've now put 2 notes. 2 and. 3 and. 4 and. Sorry, let me put my little picture back where it belongs. So now you can see that I've programmed that in, okay? If you look up in the track, you can see that all of those squares are filled in right up here, nice and evenly. You can zoom in so you can see it better, okay? And that's there. So that is the groove. I've said that I want my groove to happen 3 times and my fill to happen once, as opposed to 1 time for the groove, 1 time for the fill. So I'm going to take this groove that I've made, I'm going to loop it so that it fills 3 measures. I'm going to move forward till I find the 4th measure. See how the 4th measure is blank now because I haven't programmed that yet. See, I'm scrolling down here. And if I set that, this is the 4th measure. So I have 3 measures of my groove. Now I'm going to make a 4th measure, which is my fill. So the drum fills down here. And again, we start from the kick, which is on the bottom. And the kick I left the same. You can see it's the same as the drum groove. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and. The snare is way more active. So that one, I'm just going to move my picture here. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. And then finally, I had the hi-hat do the same thing as the snare. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. All right, so now you can see that I've programmed in my groove. Up here in the track, if you look in the track here, you can see that there's a line here. Those are 2 separate regions. I've got a region for my groove and a region for my fill. Okay, and I can move the fill. The fill should start right at the beginning of measure 4. Okay, or if you're doing a one measure groove and one measure fill, then the fill should start at the beginning of measure 2. So there we go. If we go back and read our instructions, let me just put these tabs back where they belong. That's the wrong screen. Hang on. Let's get back where we belong. There we go. So I can put that back up where it belongs. Fill the screen. So we hop over here, and we can see that number 5, add a drum track to your project. We did that. Use the Pattern Beatmaker to program your groove and fill. We did that. Remember that your planner is divided into 2 subdivisions per beat, and the Pattern Beatmaker has 4. That's why we left those extra spaces. And then loop your drum parts to fill 4 measures. So you can see how we looped the groove for 3, and the 4th one is the fill. Okay, and those are different. You can even see in the little rectangles that those are different parts. They look different. All right, good. And that completes step number 5. Now, some of you, I've seen you do this, and I think this is a wonderful idea. Highlight those steps when you're done, so you know they're done. And that way, if you need to come back to this later, you can. All right, so the next thing is we're going to look at step 6, add a bass track, a keyboard track, and a synth track. Hop over to Soundtrap. We can close this Beatmaker out of the way. We're going to add a bass track. Close that out of the way. We're going to add a keyboard or guitar track. Take your pick. I'm going to do keyboard. Close that out. And then a synth track. So you're going to see synth down here. And we'll get a random, regular old synth. Close that out as well. So now I've got my 3 tracks. Check this: bass track, keyboard or guitar, and synth. Okay, that step 6 is done. Check that off the list. Now, we're going to choose 1 bass loop and 1 chords loop from the options on the next slide. Now, it's not actually the next slide. It's 2 slides down. We're going to download the MIDI file and drag it into the correct track in Soundtrap. Make sure that the instrument for each track is appropriate for the part played. So make sure the bass track is in, or the bass loop is in the bass track. That's what's really important, because if you just drag the file in, Soundtrap is going to assume that it's something different, like a drum track or a piano track or whatever, and it won't actually be playing a bass sound, and it's going to make everything sound pretty weird. So again, 1 bass loop, 1 chords loop. Let's go down to that slide down here. If you click on the audio samples, you can hear these before you download them. So if you want to listen for the bass loop, here's the first bass loop. Okay. Now you can hear that already has an instrument assigned to it. You can change that. So once you put the MIDI region, the MIDI file, into Soundtrap, you can change whatever instrument you want. So don't listen to the sound of the instrument. Listen to what the instrument is doing, and that's how you're going to pick this. Here's loop number 2. Okay, and here's loop number 3. So just for fun for right now, I'm going to pick loop number 3. Click it, and if you click the link here, it'll just download. You'll see it'll come down into your browser bar at the bottom. Go over into my Soundtrap project, and this is really important, folks. Drag the file into the bass track, not any other track, not out here into the open space. Bring it into your bass track, and drop it in. Now you'll see that that loop lasts almost 4 measures, so we're going to have to fix that later. But that was our bass loop. Now we need our chords loop. So come in here. You can listen to the loops again. Okay, and you can hear each of them. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. Okay. Now you'll see, so the second one right now sounds like guitar. Now when I download it, this is the thing about MIDI instruments. When I download it, I'm going to put it in a piano track. I can change that later. I can change the instrument. But for now, that's going to sound like piano. because I'm putting it into a track that was set up as a piano. So give this a listen. Okay, so just be clear about that. Whatever instrument you make the track when you set it up, that's the instrument that's going to play the part that you're bringing in. Now you can always change it later. Again, you can make this whatever sound you want through all of these menus, but it's really important to know that it's going to be what you set it to be. Okay, and then so that gets our bass loop and our chord loop. Let's go back up to our instructions. So check number 7 says choose one bass loop and one chords loop from the options. Download the MIDI files and drag them into the correct track in Soundtrap. Make sure that the instrument for each track is appropriate for the part played. So the bass track has a bass instrument, and the chords track has an appropriate chord instrument, which could be strings, could be synthesizer, could be keyboard, and like piano or anything, could be guitar. Any of those are good options. Okay, but make sure that it's not drums or some other, or bass. You don't want the chords part to be played by a bass instrument. That wouldn't fit. So just be clear on that. And we've done that now. So I can go ahead and highlight instruction 7. That's done. Good. Now, instruction 8, trim or loop your bass and chords regions to make them 4 bars. Okay, 4 measures. Okay, bars and measures mean the same thing. Now, we can see that our drums are 4 bars and our chords loop already goes all the way out to the 4 bars. You can double check it just by sort of grabbing the trim tab and making sure it snaps to the end of that 4th bar. But you notice how our bass loop is a little bit short, and we want it to match everything else. So we're going to grab that trim tab, not the loop tab, the trim tab, and drag it just so it matches everything else. And you should see it snap just so it lines up with everything else. Okay, let's give that a listen so we can hear what we've got so far. All right, so we've got our drums that we composed ourselves. We've got our bass line and our chords that we picked from somewhere else. And here you go. Okay, good. Back to our instructions. We just completed number 8. So we're going to highlight that, mark that as done. There you go. And not finally, but our next thing is instruction 9. Go to SongMaker and use the template to compose a 4-measure melody that starts and ends on A, which is purple. Now, one thing to notice is that on the last slide, I gave you an example of this. I want you to look at this. So we have 4 measures: white area, gray area, white area, gray area. That's 4 measures. And this one starts on the purple. See, the purple's near the middle in this template. Okay, so it starts on the purple, it sort of walks around, goes some places, comes back to the purple again, and then this one doesn't quite end on purple. And to be honest, if yours doesn't end on purple, that's not a big deal. As long as it starts on the purple and then goes somewhere over the course of your 4 measures. So we will do this. So let's go back up to the slide. We'll find the template, this template here. Okay, let me just get rid of that bar for a second. Okay, so it starts on purple, just like it's supposed to. We're going to go... Okay, so I'm going to fill all 4 measures. Not fill, but I'm going to compose for all 4 measures. So that kind of, it doesn't end on purple, but it sort of leads back to purple. So let's give that a listen and hear what that sounds like. I like that. I think that works. So now, move my picture there. We have what we need. We're going to go to Save, download the MIDI. Okay, and we have our file there. We go back to our Soundtrap tab right here and drag it in to our synth track. And that should come in as 4 measures just like that. Now we can hear the whole thing. Okay, so a couple of things. We can hear that the piano part here, the chords part's a little too loud, so we can make that a little softer. We can hear that the bass is probably about right, but the drums are actually a little too loud, and we're going to push the melody a little bit just so we can hear that better. Here's one more listen. And we might decide we want different instruments now that we hear all that put together, and we can go back and change. I can change that from a bright synth sound to, you can hear some of these. Here's a Cobra. Yeah. Let's go with that one. I think I might like that one better. So notice it's gray, so that means I've selected it, and we can go back, and this is what that would sound like. And just changing that sound makes it much easier to hear, and I think that works together better. So that means we have completed instruction 9. We've placed our melody into our project. We'll highlight that again. Okay, moving on. Now we need to create a build-up. And a build-up in electronic dance music or techno means that the parts sort of add in one after another. So we're going to decide which part comes in first and which part comes in second and third and fourth. What you're going to end up with is a 16 measure build-up. All right, so let's see how that looks in Soundtrap. So you see these measures up here. These are counting your measures. So this only goes to measure 10. I need to zoom out. So come get your, down here, your little magnifying glass buttons. Okay, and you're going to zoom out. And now I can see 16 measures, so I can leave that. Put that back where it was. Oh, and I won't need to import any files, so I can actually give us some more screen room there. There we go. Okay, so I personally, since this is a drum unit, I think I'm going to let my drums come in first. So now, because I've got 2 different regions in the drums, I can't just loop one of them out. I need to copy paste. So let me take that. I'm going to draw a nice rectangle that touches both. You see how they ever so slightly change color when you touch them? I wish that was more dramatic, but that's all Soundtrap does, just a little color change. So I'm going to select them both, Control C for copy. And when I paste, it's going to paste wherever this purple line is called the playhead. So if it's right where I want it right now, so I'm just going to paste, paste, and paste. And that's 16 measures now. I've filled 16 measures. So the next thing, I personally think I would like my, I would like my bass part to come in next. So I'm just going to scoot that over so it comes in after 4 measures. I'm going to loop that out so it lasts all the way to the end of measure 16. Then I think I want my melody to come in after 4 more measures. And I'm going to loop that out. And the last thing I want to come in is going to be my chords loop. All right, so you can now see how this is a buildup. We're adding tracks as we go, and there's more and more sound. So let's give that a listen, and you can hear this sort of buildup that goes. Starts with just the drums. And then here comes the bass. There's the melody. And there's your chords line. All right, now if we zoom out again a little bit, we can see the whole project so far. Okay, we can see our 16 measures. We can see that we filled all 4 of the tracks. Come back over, and we've created the proper form. That's your proper form. We're going to highlight that again. In case you have any questions about what the form should look like, I've also given you a little sample down here on the last slide of the project. You can see how there's an example here, and this actually links to a video that you can watch of this particular project. But you can see how even in this picture, the tracks sort of add in one after another every 4 measures. We have some space here, and then the beat drops after the open space. Okay, so that open space happens, and then everything comes back in at the end. So let's go ahead and go back to our instructions. And instruction 11, create a 1 measure sweep, and then have all 4 of your parts come back in together for 4 more measures. All right, so the sweep, you can pick one of the sweeps that are here on the last slide. So we have a space sweep, we have a bell sweep, and we have a swish sweep. Now I'm going to pick the space sweep. Okay, and now that that's downloaded, down at the bottom of my screen, I can go back to my Soundtrap project. And this one, I don't need to make a new track. I can just drag that file right in. And I want to put it right at the end here, right in it's measure 17, which you can see up there at the top. And that's going to be the sweep to fill in the gap. So you can see this, the demonstration, the project example here, you can see that there's that gap between the build-up and then the beat drop at the end. So the instructions, if you go back up to the instructions, number 11, create a 1 measure sweep, which we just did. If you look, it's 1 measure, falls exactly into measure 17. And then, here we go. And then have all 4 of your parts come back in together for 4 more measures. All right, so if I just go ahead and take this little bit, right? Copy, go to measure 18 and paste. I'm going to take this right here, copy, Control C to copy, or you can, copy here, again, click and paste. Okay, now you see how there's some extra there? You have 2 choices, really. You can leave it longer. As long as everything lines up, you can leave it longer. I'm looking for at least 4 measures after the beat drop. Okay, so we're going to bring the chords back in here. And we're going to bring in our melody back in. There we go. And if I can loop that out. So now everything comes back in. The instructions say 4 measures, but it's 4 or more measures. So now if we give this a listen, you can hear the whole thing. You can hear that rewind to the beginning. Hear that whole build up over time. And then you get the sweep of sort of like lightness or like something different, some complete change. And then the whole tune comes back in all at once again, and you get the impact of that beat drop. So here's the example. The drums started out, and then you can see up here where the bass part comes in. Then we get our melody. And finally the chords come in. We get our sweep. Then everything comes back in together and we get the whole sound. And that's the end of the project. So that whole structure there where we add 1 part in at a time until we have everything in, we have that silence or that sweep, and then we drop everything else back in. That is a classic example of EDM music. So I'm going to hit save for my project. Look over here. So I completed instruction 11. We'll highlight that one. And then we're going to look at instruction 12. Save your project and take a screenshot and paste it into the box at the right. So we already hit save. We'll do our screenshot, which is Shift Windows S. We're going to take our screenshot here. There we go. And then we can go over and paste that in our digital notebook. Just Control V, shrink it down so it fits inside the box. And there you have it. I'm going to highlight that to let myself know that I'm done. I have completed the whole project. And that's it. That is project 2.5, your EDM buildup. So along the way, if you need to go back to any of the steps, please look at the chapters for YouTube. If you look down near the time code at the bottom, you'll see it'll say intro, step 1, step 2, step 3. Check those chapters out. You can jump around to whatever you need. Once you click on it down in the timeline at the bottom, then you'll get a window off to the left where you can select any chapter you want, and it'll say the step and what you need to do. So feel free to use that or contact me if you have any questions. But good luck with Project 2.5, your EDM buildup.